Hello, how are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah. So maybe you can just start by telling me your name and what you do.
Well, thank you. Daniel Juma Isin Ade. Uh, Professionally, I'm a broadcast journalist and I'm a substance abuse survivor. And I help young people with addiction problems through Action We Foundation, an organization we founded in 2019.
Okay. How did you, where did you grow up and how did you start with substance abuse?
Well, thank you. I grew up in a border town, cosmopolitan, southwest of the capital, Juba, that is Kaya. And Kaya, being a border town, it has been a town that brought people from different cultures and backgrounds. And as a young boy growing up, I was exposed to some of these substances at an early age. I was also engaging with youth who are not my age mates. So I was exposed to these substances at that young age. And well, Kaya generally was a place that welcomes everyone. So people came with their different lifestyles. We have people who are coming from Nairobi. We have people who are coming from the interior of Congo because it's a border town that borders Uganda, Congo, and South Sudan. And we have people who are coming also from some parts of South Sudan. So when they come to the border, these are children who have been raised with different kind of families, and everybody brings something new, and that's how I found myself exposed to some of these substances. And Kaya Town is one of the towns that I spent my teen life.
What kind of substances?
Yeah, I started smoking the leaves of popo. I know this may surprise many. Yeah, you can get the dry popo leaves and then roll it up and smoke. That's what I started with. And then also I did try the local brewed alcohol, Siko, Waragi. And then later on I started smoking cigarette, the local one before the one that it's manufactured in the factory. It would be either Supermatch. And then after that, I started doing some local drugs where I come from. They call them like cocaine, and it's a substance that when you take the leaf and or the seeds, once it has a body contact with you, of course, it gets you high. It changes your psychobin, and then also doing some drugs like marijuana. We call it commonly here bangi, and then doing some other prescription medicines. Yeah.
So you took all this at the age of what? How old are you?
I was by then so young. I want to say below. I started below the age of 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Below the age of 10.
Yeah. Started drugs below 10.
How does how does that feel? Like you're a kid.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I was a kid at that time, and I got exposed to these substances at that young age, and I was admiring a lifestyle outside our family. Growing up from a Christian family, a strong health family, because my mother is a doctor, my father is a doctor. I have elder brothers who are doctors, so I was much confided in the house, and I admire family. I admire people who are outside the family. So when I got exposed to other kids who were outside the family, I know that's when I also found that they were doing some of these drugs, and then also started engaging with people who were not my age, and people who, if you stay with people who are not your age group, definitely be exposed to things, not even drugs, but even other things that you're not supposed to be exposed to as a kid. So I got exposed to some of these things, and as early as that, I dropped out of school when I was in P3, and I was also admiring a life of a tan boy, because when I was seeing these tan boys, Kaya is a border town, cars keep on coming and there and there. When I admire the life of, when I see these tan boys, they have a freedom because they can smoke at any time they want. They can do anything they want because they're like free outside their family, and they can travel with these cars to any part they want to go. So as a young man, I was admiring the life of a tan man, and I want to be a tan man so that I can be able to do my drugs. So that's when I dropped out of school at that age. So I started doing drugs below the age of 10. Yeah.
So, when did you leave Kaya then?
Yeah, I did not leave Kaya immediately. My family also realized that the environment was harming me a lot. I came to Juba in 2006. In Juba I was still doing my drugs, and then I went back to Uganda, and I was taken to a boarding school in Uganda. And when I was in that boarding school, it also gave me more freedom, and I met a lot of young people who were coming from different parts, and all of us, different cultures converging in one boarding school. We also started doing a lot of drugs in school, and then slowly I tried. I finished P7. Then I went for my secondary school. I was still doing drugs even in my secondary school, and then I dropped out after my senior four. Then I could not advance my education further because my parents had already given up on me because of my drugs. So then I went to the street, started doing my MCing gigs and stuff like that, and then I came back home to Kaya. And in Kaya, and then there was a radio station established called Radio Ngunukata. And then one of the guys came and he was like, you know what, this boy has a talent. Why can't we bring him closer to us in the radio, and maybe we can be able to help him? So when I was brought to the radio, I was trained as a radio producer, a presenter. I was introduced to a lot of technical work in the radio, and slowly I started losing my friends who were doing the drugs. And then I got one manager from Yei who was working for Liberty FM Triple J when he came for a show in Kaya, and then he had me emceeing, and then he had work in the radio, and then he was like, "Yo, we need to take you to Yei," and that's when I left Kaya. I was picked from Radio Ngunukata. I was taken to Kaya, and I worked also in Liberty FM for some time, where I was also doing my drugs and stuff like that, and then I ran mad while
While
doing
doing
radio
these
work. Yeah,
drugs,
yeah, doing
no
this.
one noticed you're in the radio and you're doing drugs. People did not
Yeah,
notice.
people notice, but then they don't see something bad with it because I don't engage in something violent about it. I don't go violent when I do the drugs. Instead, I become more creative, and then I start doing a lot of stuff. And also, my senior guys didn't know that I was doing drugs because after my show, I have to walk out. Thereafter, they don't know what I do. All they know that yes, I drink alcohol, but I don't what I don't smoke. So that's what happened with me when I was in Yei, and then I went back to Kaya again.
How did you run mad? What was the experience?
I can't tell because once you're mad, you don't have any sense, like you don't know what's happening with you. But the truth is that I was in the studio, and I was having my show, and then I picked some calls. After the calls, and then I went for a musical break. After the music, I went for a musical break. Then I walked out of the studio to come and say hi to a few friends outside, and that was it. And I was having also nose bleeding, which is normal for anybody to have a nose bleeding because I used to have experiences of nose bleeding. So in our local language, we call it tupapa. So if you bleed, it means you have a tupapa and stuff like that. So, and then I could not remember anyone. And then I woke up a month after in my mom's sitting room again in Kaya. I didn't know anything. Whatever happened, I just hear stories of, yes, how I was found, and then I was brought home, and then now they are treating me at home. And my mother took the case so personal because she's a doctor, so like she can nurse me in her sitting room. She's not taking me anywhere, and that's why I woke up in my mom's sitting room. So that's technically how I left Kaya, and then I got back to Kaya again. And then after that, my mother was like, "No, we don't want you to work again in the radio." And that's how you'll get involved in the issues to do with drugs. We don't want you to be an MC again. We don't want you to be involved with any secular music again. So I was just home like a boy. I stayed, and then I was like, no, I can't stay like this. And then I picked myself, then I went back to EA again, picked up the radio work. And then the people who trained me in Kaya, in Radio Munukata, one of them was working in Bor. And then he was like, hey, Dan, there is a job here offered by then there is an organization called Visitors, I think, funded by USAID. So they wanted somebody to capacitate presenters in Radio Jungle. So the only person who can do that, he said, it's me. So he recommended me. And that's when I got picked up from Liberty FM. Then I was taken to Bor. I was there for a year under Visitors. And then I did my best. And then I left. And then I came back to Juba.
Which year was this now?
This was 2016 to 2017. Yeah. And then I was in I was in both 2016-17. Then I came to Juba, and then I joined Radio One for 2.5 years, doing my drugs until when I met my turning point.
So while in Juba, what kind of drugs were you doing?
When I was in Juba, Juba found me when I was already at my peak of getting out of the drugs. And then what I was so much addicted to was the marijuana. I was doing it a lot. Even where I used to work, I go behind, I smoke. So it was becoming like a normal cigarette.
And you're telling me like you would smoke the whole day and then also go for the radio?
Like I used to run a night program, a night show. So what I do is that when I wake up in the morning, I drive to the center. I do my drugs. After doing my drugs, then I get back to the studios and do my work. So like I got so addicted to marijuana to the point that I only have 30 minutes to research for my show. And I also end up putting up a good show, and people be like, hey, you have a nice voice, but I didn't know where I drive my voice from. So that's how like I've been doing in Juba for 2.5 years, doing a lot of drugs. But also when I was in Juba, I was already peak of getting out of the drugs and finding ways of how I can be able also to get out of the drugs.
What made you to think of getting out of the drugs?
Yeah, what made me to get out of the drugs, one is that economically it was hurting me in terms of money, because I need money. And it is so funny, the money even I was paid at that radio, I don't want to mention, but it's a peanut. And that's the money I can enter Munuki, and this money cannot take me back. You see, so if I'm using this money for drugs, and then I have a family that they're having a hope that yes, their son is there, the son is working, and then also I remember also I have a lady who is also pregnant for me at that time, and then I have a child later that was born with cerebral palsies, and these resources were not all amounting to something that I can be able to take care of my responsibilities at home and even for my immediate family. So it was hard. So I decided like I need to try and quit some of these substances, but it is hard to quit drugs, and indeed it's very hard to quit drugs if there is no total will in you. And then so one of the things that made me to quit drugs is the fact that I didn't have enough resources to be able to sustain, because sustaining drug addiction needs a lot of money. Yeah.
And you told me you ended up like having a lady pregnant, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience, right?
Yeah.
Because it was had its
Yeah,
own.
yeah. So it actually it's more complicated, but the lady whom I impregnated, it turned out to be someone who's related to me. So I found myself in incest. The experience alone, it's so traumatizing. And then I also lost the child, and not only losing, but also the child also made us to incur a lot of losses, because we have to put him in the hospital for 3 years.
The child was
born with cerebral
ill,
palsy.
yeah,
Yes,
cerebral
yes, he was not born normal, and he had cerebral palsy. So being in the hospital for 3 years needs a lot of resources. And this is somebody who's earning peanuts in Juba, and is also doing drugs. So the whole thing was really hitting me up. So
how did you feel about yourself while undergoing all these experiences?
yeah, I'm say I found myself not fulfilling my responsibilities at some point, and then through also I just felt like I'm hiding. I'm hiding in something, because I was going through a lot, and there was nobody I could talk to understand my situation, because everybody at home was like, I there's only my bank told I is only my hajat told higher told, everybody was just like pushing me, and there was nobody to talk to. I only find comfort in doing my drugs. So I was frustrated, and I could not do something, to change the situation. But the only thing I did was to sink myself deep into drugs and then continue coping. Yeah.
So you feel sad, and then you go more into drugs to feel happy.
Yeah, to feel happy, create that mood of happiness. Drugs are depressions, but the fact that you take a lot of it, and also it harms you in one way or the other. So sometimes I take these drugs to make sure that I cope with my situation. So if the situation wakes me up every day, and then I have to wake up early in the morning, and then I go for my drugs and still continue doing my drugs. So my most reason for getting addicted, like for marijuana in Juba, was more of my family issues and stuff like that. And then two, I had already also dropped out of school by then, and most of the guys who were schooling together, they were already doing big in Juba. Guys are driving, guys are settling houses and stuff like that. And that social gap, you know, has been there, and it's traumatizing. And to have an acceptance that yes, you spoiled yourself in school and then you need to change, it was very hard to admit at that time. So the only thing I did was just do my drugs. So if we meet up with them, even if we stayed with you 1 year back or 2 years back, I don't have time for you. I just have time for my guys who do drugs. So my social gap, yeah, it went down, and only associated now with my people who I do drugs with. So
Talk me through the child's death. How did you get that, and what? That was a very painful experience.
With the death of my child, yeah, I think it's a very painful experience, and up to now I've not yet gotten out of it. But every day I'm learning to accept that he has gone, because I didn't want him to die. So I want him to survive, so that at least there will be a story. But one thing also I thank for his death, though it sounds ridiculous, is that his death also became my turning point of getting out of drugs, because I don't want to have another child born in a mess as him, and I don't want to have another child born like him where I don't have any money, and I don't want to have a child born outside a proper marriage. So like his death has changed a lot about my perception about many things and how I want to address other things. And first of all, when I had, because I got the news from my brothers, like, hey Dan, you know what, your child has died. So I didn't want to accept that. I just hung up. I went for my things.
You went for drugs?
Yeah, I just hung up the call. I went for my drugs. Going with my normal day. I didn't want to accept it, which is a very dangerous thing in mental health, not accepting the situation and moving on with your life. So I came home. So I started people coming. People were crying. It still didn't come to my head. But then I started shivering. So even if I want to light cigarette, I could not light properly. But then when my mother came, and she was, now and then I have to accept that people are traveling from everywhere to come to this house. This is true, this child has died. So it took me 2 days to accept that he has died. And then after that, I also went more into my drugs, because I didn't have money. In my culture, if you have a death in your house, definitely people will come and ask, how much do you have, so that we can be able to solve this, because there are in-laws who are coming, and then you have a lot of people who are coming to this house, and all of them require resources to maintain them here, and I don't have that money. Even the money I have cannot even afford breakfast for all the people. So that thing alone traumatized me. So I have to go and do my drugs again, then come home when I'm drunk, so that they have no time to talk to me. So they have no time to give me even opportunity to talk or address some issues, because I'll talk nonsense. So I was using that to hide away from the situation. So accepting that my child died, I accepted 2 days after. But up to now, I'm just learning how to cope with it, and that okay, he's no longer there and life has to go on. And the fact that also I committed incest, it didn't sink well with me. It took time with me also to adjust, but then all these experiences gave me a turning point in my life, and I was like, yeah, let me just give it a quit for the drugs and see what life comes after that.
Because you're not only the child died, but also your family had to resolve the incest issue and separate the relationship between you and the lady. And also the incest was also blamed for the child's both sickness and death. And that was a painful process also.
Yeah, it's a painful process, because medically it's cerebral palsy, we know, and chances of children surviving with cerebral palsy in Africa, it's very low. But now culturally here, they have to attach it to something. So the incest became the cause of the death, and we were charged some money. Otherwise, if it was in the village, we are supposed to be caned like children, because we messed up. It's a laughable situation, but then it was painful by then. And yeah, that's how we solved it, and we paid some cash. and then the situation ended there. We were separated as husbands and wife. She comes home like a sister now, and everybody accepted to move on with their life. Yeah.
What did you feel sorry for anything during that process, at least from the lady's side?
Well, the only thing I felt sorry for was coming home drunk and intoxicated with the drugs and being chased in the area like a small boy when I was not accepted. That thing was I came and I have to apologize. But then for the incident that happened, into to do with incest and stuff like that, I think we didn't grow up together as close families. You know, the war scattered many people everywhere. And being also a young boy, I was into this social life, MCing, music, and all stuff like that. I got exposed to the outside, and then I moved outside the family. So that's where I met her.
So you didn't know?
I didn't meet her where I grew up. I met her somewhere in another town. So I could not apologize for that. But I also felt just sorry for what I did before the in-laws that day when I was drunk and stuff like that.
How big is the issue of drugs in South Sudan?
Well, I want to say is that the issue of drugs is big in South Sudan in a way that we don't have control over it. And I usually say it's available and affordable. In terms of affordability, yes, 11-year-old or even a minor way below that age can still go to a shop and purchase some of these items. And we have some of these psychotropic substances entering through checkpoints that are controlled by authorities of this country, and nobody is bothering to even confiscate some of these things. Even if they're confiscated, they still end up in the wrong hands and they make it back to the market. And then secondly, bans have been there, but these bans don't materialize because there is no education attached to it. So you cannot ban something when you did not tell me it's dangerous. You can ban it, I'll go for it. Until you educate me that it's not good, then you ban it, then I will not go for it because I know it is not good for me. So also the educational part, it's not there, and this contributes to the affordability of it. Why? It is banned, you find people go and still buy these things from the authorities who confiscated these items from them, and then it ends up coming out to issues of the market. Then secondly, you can buy bangi at 300 pounds. You see, this one, even a young boy can go and buy it at 300 pounds. He can buy. And now, talk of the prescription drugs, which is the most trend of drugs among young people right now compared to the days like me when I started my drugs. You have a cough syrup that is entering the country as medicinal medicine, and its purpose is supposed to be different, but then you find young people are buying these things. So what is the drug authority doing to make sure that at least these things are not sold to minors, they are sold to the right people? There at least has to be some regulations in place. So you'll find that I'll buy this syrup and mix it with Coca-Cola, and it turns out to be a psychotropic drug. People can buy O5 and then mix it with water, and then they get high. A medicine that's supposed to be made, it's meant for people who are psychosis, people who are halfway mad maybe, and then this medicine is supposed to be administered to them. But then you find a normal young person buy this medicine and then administer to themselves, who are normal people turn themselves to be abnormal. You see, so these are all substances that are so affordable in South Sudan, and there is no control over it. You see, they are affordable and they are available. If you want it, you can get it in the immediate hour as long as you have the money. So the use of drugs among young people is it's growing a lot, and it's so common and it's big and it requires a serious attention.
Yeah. So how did you manage to quit?
Well, what I did was I employed some distractors, and I also confided with someone. Like I met someone who is outside my family, not even my girlfriend, not anybody related to me in any way. So, but I found enabling environment to confide in that passion. So we talked, and she was like, "Yeah, you just need to do A, B, C, Z, A, B, C, Z." And that's when I started dropping slowly from drugs. I eventually left my toxic circle of friends who were more related to drugs. And then another distract I had was how to set a mini kitchen for me so that I'll have time to cook for myself, wash my own utensils. And then I also created time for swimming over the weekends. I hike, I swim, I jog, I cycle. I also do a lot of walking in my area. I was renting in an area that even I've never walked. I just get up early in the morning and disappear and come late in the night. But then I have to create some time, like walk around my my hood. And then also what I did was go to the forest where I used to go and smoke weed. But this time I go and watch my favorite movies. So there are simple distractors that I did that helped me to get out of this drug simply by having no time to go and do the drugs. So I usually have an excuse to do the drugs. So that's what helped me a lot. Just I employed my distractors. I have no time for drugs. And slowly it became my routine. It became like a habit, and later on it changed my character.
How are you feeling now that you're free of drugs?
Yeah, I feel accepted. I feel accepted. One thing is that it helped rebuild my relationship with my family members. At least there is a recognition where at least they'll call, yes, we have a son. And once I go home, I feel like that boy my mother can quarrel to, my mother can talk to, because those days nobody talks to me. And in our culture, if nobody talks to you, which means it's you're on your own, nobody cares. So the feeling of acceptance, especially for me by my family, once again, it's a big one, and I feel okay. I feel like, yeah, I'm a son to someone again. Yeah.
But you also went ahead and started an organization. Maybe you can tell me about the campaign first and the organization.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we went ahead and established an organization in 2019, and the aim of the organization, the idea simply came from giving an ear to someone. Like, I was helped by someone, but also we need to have a platform that can be able to help people like me who are going through some of these substances. And we founded it under the names of Farm for Change initially. And the whole picture of Farm for Change was to have a space where we have young people living in it, and they are changed. And we are farming change. We're not farming crops or whatever. We're just farming new lives of people, and which is still there. And it's the rehab name. It's a rehabilitation name center that is coming up. And then we changed the name in 2020 to Action Wave Foundation. And Action Wave Foundation's action stands for the strategies that we have, and we are the target audience, especially the youth. So what we do is that we create spaces, conversations with major intention to have prevention, and then treatment and support for people who are having challenges to do with substance abuse, especially in South Sudan. And we do through educational programs. One of our educational programs that falls under the arm of the Drugs Mahaya campaign. And this will make me to talk about a little bit about the Drugs Mahaya campaign. So the Drugs Mahaya campaign, it's a mixture of both English and Arabic. And drugs, which is an English word, and then Mahaya is an Arabic word that means like it's not a lifestyle. It's not something that you fancy to have. So in Kiswahili they say drugs is swag. So this campaign stands on three pillars. That's education, inspiration, and engagement. So through education, we educate young people about the dangers of drugs. We impact negative perception through these drug education programs. And then in the inspiration, we share our stories of addiction and recovery and what we are achieving now through sobriety to inspire them so that they can be able to get out of the drugs and change. And then the engagement is after when you're changed, or after when you're impacted with a negative perception and you're inspired by the story, we need to engage you as a champion in the community. And through the engagements now, we engage some of these young people so that they can be able to share their stories with their peers in other communities, and then they continue the cycle of change wherever they will be. And Drugs Mahaya has been in South Sudan since 2019, late 2019, 2021 till this day. And it's a lifetime campaign that will always continue. And we are trying to create more chapters so that if we have more young people in this campaign, they'll be able to change in their immediate communities. So Drugs Mahaya also gave us a challenge that young people, yes, they're getting the negative perception about drugs. They are willing to quit the drugs, and we are not sustaining their sobriety. So that was the biggest challenge we had. So what we did was Drugs Mahaya challenges gave us an opportunity to have another program called a sober meetup. Now the sober meetup, it's a program that brings young people, or it's a platform that brings all these young people who are sober curious, or people who have rehabilitated themselves in different other, in many other rehabilitations, because we don't have one in this country. Either go to Kampala or you go to Nairobi or another country in the region, and then you come back, but you don't have a space to continue your program. So we welcome them into the space, and then they continue with us. The whole purpose is to have an intentional living together, intentional friendship together, have an accountability check on one another, sobriety accountability check. And through this, we'll be able to have peer-to-peer support without the organization injecting a lot of resources to maintain that friendship between you and your peers.
Yeah.
And also, through this meetup, we have been having young people now getting encouraged to share their stories in one way or the other. Also, we are fighting stigma through the meetup and also the Drugs Mahaya programs. And recently, also, we have been engaging. We have been having community drug education series that goes into the communities now, talking from the level of parents, and then their children, and then their immediate authorities who are within them in the area. So we've been having this conversation with them also on drugs, and the whole point is that how do we address these drugs? Because the drug education is going to the schools. After the school, the children come home, and maybe after the home they go into the area. So it becomes a whole circle. So the only thing we did was to make sure we have an open conversation. Maybe somebody can say intergenerational, maybe dialogue with these communities, so that they can be able to know where to address, and these children raise why are they doing some of these substances, and then where can what can the community do, and then what can action we do as an organization, or what government can be able to do, so that everybody can play a big role. So we have been having this series, and it has been so amazing. We started this month, and the response has been so good, and people are coming out, expressing out their grievances, why they are doing drugs, and many other things that are coming up, and things that people pay less attention to, especially. And one of the funniest thing we got was that women even crave for drugs when they are pregnant, you see, and which is also very dangerous to their health, and something that has never been captured in the literature of sexual reproductive health in South Sudan. And all these things is usually coming up, and is pointing to something somewhere else. And we are hoping that through these programs, we'll be able to address many other issues that are associated with the drugs. Yeah.
What is the thing that gives you hope?
What gives me hope is when somebody comes out of his stigma and shares his story openly about drugs, like me. And that happened this year, when one of the young ladies came out and she was talking openly about her drugs, and we took her to Radio Miraya, and she was openly talking about it, and it really gave me joy that yes, it's possible to come out of these drugs, rehabilitate yourself, and give yourself for someone to come out again. Yeah.
Dan Hytes, thank you.